As we turn to our chalice lighting this morning, I want to offer words from Kathleen McTeague from the book Lifting Our Voices. It's a supplement to the hymnal that includes a number of readings, including from UU sources like Kathleen McTeague. Here in the refuge of this Sabbath home, we turn our busy minds toward silence and our full hearts toward one another. We move together through the mysteries, the bright surprise of birth and the shadowed questions of death. In our slow walk between the two, we will be wounded, and we will be showered with grace, amazing, unending. Even in our sorrows, we feel our lives cradled in holiness we cannot comprehend. And though we each walk within a vast loneliness, the promise we offer here is that we do not walk alone. This is a holy place, even on Zoom, in which we gather. The light of the earth brought in and held, touched then by our answering light. The flame on a chalice, the flickering of a candle, the lamps of our open faces brought near. In this place of silence and celebration, solemnity and music, we make a sanctuary and name our home. If you have a chalice with you at home, I would invite you to bring it near now as we light our chalices together. A reading now from Joseph Campbell, who was a great believer in the power of myth to propel us to our better selves, including myths like the book that I'll be talking about in my sermon. Joseph Campbell wrote the following: "We have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path. And where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find a god. Where we had thought to travel outward, we will come to the center of our own existence. Where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world."
Leave the dishes in the sink, don't overthink it. Close up, broken-hearted piano. Join Join me on the porch if you can swing it. Let's dream an ocean in Ohio. You've been working so hard, I can feel it. The clean and honest sweat upon your skin. I wanna see the rosy light on your face. Is this evening free, or did it cost us everything? It's our favorite time of life. Just before the day kisses the night, you see the red-winged blackbirds fly. The sun's a big old lazy eye. When the day is bending low and rolling fields begin to glow, feels like we traveled all this way just so I could hear you say it's our favorite time of life. Can you still hear those children singing? Remember, Jesus loves me, this I know. Now there's just a lone blue heron flying, dreaming an ocean in Ohio. It's our favorite time of life. Just before the day kisses the night, you see the red-winged blackbirds fly. The sun's a big old lazy eye. The moon is waiting in the wings, dreaming of some midnight song to sing. And I know it'll be okay every time I hear you say it's our favorite time of life. Dreams I've dreamed, I give them all to you now. I'm not really sure what shape they're in. Maybe they were all just too expensive. Maybe after dark we'll try again. So add this to your list of simple beauty. I know we're gonna miss it when we go. While barren fields undress their gentle mysteries, we dream an ocean in Ohio. It's our favorite time of life. Just before the day kisses the night, you see the red-winged blackbirds fly. The sun's a big old lazy eye. When they lay me down at last, and this life is finally past, just remember me this way, and don't forget to say it's our favorite time of life. Our favorite time of life.
Good morning, friends. I'm Andy Burnette, Unitarian Universalist minister, recently having served a congregation in Phoenix from 2012 to 2020, and now I'm a chaplain at the VA hospital here in Cleveland. It's an honor to be with you this morning. I have a story for you today. It's not my own story. It's the story of a China rabbit from the children's book, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate DiCamillo. It's a story of joy and tragedy. It's a story of learning what it means to love another person. And I think this little story has something to teach all of us, no matter our age. I hear that your theme this month is imagination, so I'll ask you to do whatever it is you do to get your imagination going. Maybe closing your eyes helps, or maybe finding something to fidget with. Whatever it is for you, switch on your imagination as I try and draw lessons from this story that has been so important to me. Edward is a porcelain rabbit made for little Abilene by her grandmother Pellegrina. And Edward is Abilene's favorite toy. She sits him in a chair when she leaves for school so that he can look out the window while she's gone. She places him at dinner beside her in the chair. She loves Edward as a person loves a friend, as a real live being, which in fact, though he can't move or speak, Edward is. Here's a scene from early in the book in Kate DiCamillo's words. In the evening, Edward sat at the dining room table with other members of the Tulane family. Abilene, her mother and father, and Abilene's grandmother, who was called Pellegrina. True, Edward's ears barely cleared the tabletop, and true also, he spent the duration of the meal staring straight ahead at nothing but the bright and blinding white of the tablecloth, but he was there, a rabbit at the table. Abilene's parents found it charming that Abilene considered Edward real and that she sometimes requested that a phrase or story be repeated because Edward had not heard it. Papa, Abilene would say, I'm afraid that Edward didn't catch that last bit. Abilene's father would then turn in the direction of Edward's ears and speak slowly, repeating what he had just heard for the benefit of the China rabbit. Edward pretended out of courtesy to Abilene to listen, but in truth, he was not very interested in what people had to say. End quote. That was Edward's manner. He was so very proud of his looks, of his clothes, and he didn't really have much concern for Abilene or for anybody else. Well, the family decided to go on vacation, but not just any vacation. They were going on a ship to England. Abilene packed Edward's finest suits, quote, so that he might cut a fine figure in London, end quote. And off they went, everyone except Pellegrina, who would stay behind to watch over the house. So as the rest of the family boarded the ship and it pulled away from the harbor, Abilene waved back at her grandmother. And here are Edward's thoughts, quote, Edward felt something damp in his ears. Abilene's tears, he supposed. He wished that she would not hold him so tight. To be clutched so fiercely often resulted in wrinkled clothing, end quote. Well, on the ship, Edward was a hit. All the kids wanted to hold him, but Abilene wouldn't allow it. But two little boys, up to no good, as we all sometimes are, snatched Edward away from Abilene and began to toss him back and forth between them, keeping him away from Abilene. Abilene cried out to them to stop, but they wouldn't. Back and forth, until one of them missed. The other boy had thrown Edward too high, and over the side of the ship he went, and into the ocean. How does a China rabbit die? DiCamillo wrote in Edward's voice. Can a China rabbit drown? Is my hat still on my head? These were the questions that Edward asked himself as he went sailing out over the blue sea. The sun was high in the sky, and from what seemed to be a very long way away, Edward heard Abilene call his name. Edward, she shouted, come back! Come back? Of all the ridiculous things to shout, thought Edward. End quote. Of all the ridiculous things to shout. The first time I read this book, I was jolted by that reaction of Edward's to Abilene's cry. Ridiculous? To shout, come back? Of course, in a sense, he was right. It was ridiculous. Edward couldn't even move. How was he going to swim back to the ship and to Abilene? But what Edward didn't understand was that there was more to what Abilene was saying. Abilene was expressing love and grief. And in that moment, I saw myself in Edward Tulane. One day, more than 10 years ago now, I was chaplain in a downtown Indianapolis hospital. I was in the room of a patient who was suffering from a disease for which there is no cure. This young man was going to die. The course of the rest of his life was pretty clear. He would be in and out of the hospital. At first, he'd be home a month between stays. Slowly, the time between stays would dwindle to the point that he was in the hospital more than he was at home. And one day before he was 40, having spent much of his life staring out the window of a hospital room, this young man would die. I spent about 30 minutes with the patient and his family, and at the end they requested prayer. And that's no problem for me, but when I asked for what they would like me to pray, one family member said, "How about a healing?" And immediately my brain started racing. I don't believe any God can take this disease away from this man. How can I pray so as not to perjure myself and my own theology while still honoring theirs? What words can I say and which can't I? I offered a prayer and left the room, but I was Edward Tulane in that moment, thinking, healing. How ridiculous. I took that scenario to a mentor, and he said something that changed my perspective. It didn't solve my dilemma exactly, but it shifted my thinking. He asked me, "What do you think that person was feeling when they asked you to pray for healing?" Well, of course, when that person asked for a prayer for healing, she was feeling scared. She was scared and sad and looking for an anchor in a great big storm. This was what was behind her request. Sometimes I hear people who come to Unitarian Universalist congregations say that they, quote, want to be around like-minded people. And I get that. I think sometimes what people mean when they say that is socially progressive people. But the great 16th century Unitarian preacher Francis David is credited with saying we need not think alike to love alike. We Unitarian Universalists differ in theological outlook and in political views. We love alike. But we do not all think alike, and certainly the people in our communities do not all think like we do. If we're not careful, we'll begin to offer little covert tests of UU orthodoxy to our guests. But our political leanings are not the basis for our union as members of the same congregation. Now, that's not to say that we should try to be chummy or seek unity with people who want us dead or don't want us to have full rights. That's not it at all. But at the root of it, no matter how different our beliefs are, we are all people who need connection and love and food and shelter and clothing. Ours is a faith which proclaims that because of our shared humanity, we can be different from each other and still do as intimate a thing as worship together, as pray together. That shared humanity is the basis for our welcome. It is so difficult, but as our ancestors made clear, we need not think alike to love alike. Well, Edward lies at the bottom of the ocean for a while, but then a storm comes up and he's washed ashore. He's found by a sailor who takes him home for him and his wife. They dress him up and they sit him at the table and they treat him like a real child, even going so far as to carry him around town and talk to him. These two experience the loss of a beloved child. Edward begins to feel the grief he is helping them assuage, but their daughter comes to visit them and she thinks it's all nonsense, her parents carrying around and talking to this porcelain doll, and so Edward ends up in the garbage. From there, he's rescued by another person, a little boy who knows Edward is the perfect gift for his sick sister. The boy and his sister have a father who is sinking into addiction. He yells at them, he hits them sometimes, he's hardly ever home. He seems to have snapped when their mother died. And now as his sister gets sicker and sicker, Edward and the little boy are with her. When she dies, the little boy and Edward go on the road. They're friends. But when he gets hungry, the boy has to sell Edward to a toy store owner. And there Edward sits for years, thinking about his grief. He mourns the loss of everyone he's loved, and he's not sure at first whether he can ever love again. But in Edward, a change is happening. And over time, he begins to long to be adopted by some little child once more. And here, I think, is the key for all human relation. Friends, I've talked to a lot of UUs. I even got cussed out by a particularly cranky one after a sermon in a different church. He said I was full of a pretty repulsive substance that comes out of a cow because I quoted a newspaper he didn't like in a positive light. We humans can be pretty judgmental. Oh, so judgmental. It's just a part of who we are, about doctrine and parenting styles and politics. Now, don't get mad at me. I love you all. I love us. But sometimes we UUs can be like the Pharisee in Jesus' story who is praying loudly in public, beating his chest and saying, I thank God that I'm not like that sinner over there, that conservative over there, that what? But we are more human than we are anything else. My favorite songwriter, Karen Berquist of the Cincinnati-based band Over the Rhine, wrote, Pain is our mother. She makes us recognize each other. Joy, too. Joy makes us recognize each other. Human experience, a chunk of it, is shared universally. Faith is shared universally, whether it's faith in God or human potential, or just that things can get better. We can think about people not as conservative Christians or Buddhists, Jews or atheists, but as people who love and laugh and grieve, who live and die. Because there are fundamentalists who are also environmentalists, fiscal conservatives who are socially progressive. One label can't get at a whole human being. Labels are useful. We need them, but if we're not careful with them, if we take them too seriously, it can prevent us from doing great good together. Again, I'm not saying we should be seeking unity with people who want to kill us. That would be absurd. But not everyone who disagrees with us wants to kill us. In the end, Edward Tulane finally gets his wish. A little girl comes into the shop and looks over all the beautiful dolls and chooses Edward. And after a miraculous journey of many years, Edward goes home with a little girl whom he can love with all his heart. I'll let you buy the book to hear the rest and find out who that is. I love this story because Edward is like so many of us. He's so self-absorbed that he sees other people mainly for the ways in which they can either help or hurt him. But by seeing love and pain and grief, the human journey all of us share, Edward comes to understand what it means to participate in something bigger and more universal than just himself. He can relate at the end of the book because his life experiences have allowed him a window into other people's hearts. So I say let this little story of a China rabbit remind us to hold tenaciously to the theology deep in our Unitarian Universalist roots, that we are all more human than we are anything else. Because the spirit of love itself, God if you prefer, is most evident in us when we tenaciously refuse to see anyone as other. When we include the other again and again and again. When we realize that we're not primarily liberal or conservative, not first theist or non-theist. We are human beings first. That is our Unitarian Universalist saving message. That's the living soul of the beloved community. That's the reason we keep widening the circle of welcome, especially to those whom we might be tempted to think of as other. Amen.
I hope that we can all say that we've never been abandoned at the bottom of the ocean. But I think this year especially has been a miraculous adventure, to put it lightly. And maybe some of us have hit rock bottom from time to time and needed that little boy, that little girl, that older couple, that toy shop owner to pick us up when we were down, teach us a thing or two, and make us feel like we're a part of this beloved community. So thank you to all of you for every time you've been here for someone or for all of us as a part of East Shore. And thank you for every time you've fulfilled your pledge by sending in your pledge check each month to the office at East Shore. And thank you as well for every time you as a member, a friend, or one of our new internet companions on this interesting journey have sent in a little something extra to help us and our community partners continue to survive and thrive throughout our own miraculous adventure. Thank you.
And now, friends, may life bless you and keep you. May the Spirit make its face to shine on you and be gracious unto you. May the universe pour out the fullness of its blessings on you and bring you peace. Go in peace, dear friends, to love and serve one another. Amen.
So
We're putting hands up, okay.
we join hands in
Unitarian
Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves to an individual religious freedom which transcends all creeds, not to think alike, but to journey together